One of the things that makes them such a valuable asset is the full service asset manager. They take into account all perspectives. They do critical thinking about, hey, how can we minimize this expense to the owner while still achieving the objectives of keeping the tenant happy and pleased with the property and addressing their concerns or issues. And that's the perspective that really pays dividends in the long run for long-term hold operators and owners is that ability to blend the two with the perspective.
Hello, welcome back to the Get Invested podcast with Matthias and Jordan. We're excited today to switch it up a little bit, and I'm sure you're going to be a little excited about it as well, because you don't have to listen to just us today. Well, I guess you don't have to ever listen to us, but you know what I mean. We got a couple extra voices here, some people to bring some fresh perspective, some people we work closely with, but I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and we can talk about the snowpocalypse of the southern coast in a second once we get introductions done. I know that's the hot, cold topic, but I'm going to turn it over to our two guests. Chamberlain, let's start with you. Tell us who you are, what you do, and how you know, well, Matthias, mainly. And I guess me too.
Thanks, Jordan. Matthias, thanks for having us on today. My name's Chamberlain Carruthers. I'm the managing director for SVN Southgate Realty here in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. We're a full-service asset management and brokerage team established for about 45 years now. I'm doing regional work in South Mississippi and the Gulf Coast regions. We've had great pleasure of working with Matthias and yourself on an acquisition you had here in Hattiesburg a few years ago. That we're thrilled to be your property management team on.
Yep, Heritage Cove, for those of you who aren't sure of the name, that's Heritage Cove with us.
Yes. We're going to let Heather here speak for herself, of course.
Hi, I'm Heather Dickerson. I've worked with SVN Southgate Realty for 18 years. I know, right? I'm the director of operations. I've seen us grow, and we're still growing, and we're thankful to people like Matthias and you, Jordan, for helping us do that.
All right. Well, as you heard, and you might have guessed based on their titles, that we are here to talk to them about property management, essentially. You guys know us. If you've listened to us enough, the topics will be wide-ranging and somewhat less than focused on occasion, but that makes it more fun. We've been after this interview for a while. I even talked about it on the pod, I don't know how many months ago, that we were going to get Heather on to tell us some stories. So now we got double the pleasure, double the chance of good stories with both Chamberlain and Heather on. So we're excited to do a deep dive into that. And Matthias, unless you want to weigh in here before we get started, I was going to just ask them about general overarching principles that they aim for, or what do you think?
No, I like that. I think one of the things that makes them such a valuable asset to our venture, our team, is the full service asset manager. Basically talking about how they take into account all perspectives. They don't just answer the phone when a tenant calls because something's not working. They're trying to look at it from the owner perspective, improve the tenant experience and the owner's experience as well. That's kind of what he means by the full service. I'd love to hear Chamberlain talk a little bit more about that philosophy.
Oh, I thought he meant he pumped gas. That's gas station. Never mind.
Yeah, so we've kind of become full service just by the way we were created. So 45 years ago, our founding principle started with a developer. And from there, in a very small market, to give you an idea, I was talking to Heather about this the other day. When our first 2 or 3 clients first got into multifamily in South Mississippi 45 years ago, they built these things thinking that they would hold them forever, not because they wanted to. They never envisioned a market being there for 30 to 80 Class C plus B minus kind of product in South Mississippi. And so it's amazing to see how things have changed. But we were founded with that principle of long-term holding. And really, that's kind of, I think, the best thing for us, because we started with owners' goals in mind, with long-term protective plays on the asset. And we've maintained that. And we do that through full service by having a maintenance team is really one of our strongest selling points. And the fact that we can handle a smaller product, that there's really not a lot of people that fit into what we do. And we accomplish that by staying very local. And we try not to venture more than about 2.5 hours outside of our market, which allows our top brass and regionals to have hands-on approaches, it allows the properties not to get 2 to 3 weeks behind on having. So that's kind of us in a nutshell.
Yeah, I'd say that one of the greatest things is just that talk a little more about that perspective. What he's talking about is that, say, because I've had experience where we've had to fire property managers on some of our smaller properties in the beginning, because if they're the manager for a bunch of single family houses, it's just different because you're always going to have to send an individual plumber or handyman or whatever out to do stuff. And that's a different approach than if you're an apartment complex. So no matter how small, you're trying to combine economies of scale. Say, hey, send the handyman out there to take care of 3 things, send them twice a week. And a lot of property managers just don't think like that. They go, hey, there's a process. I answer the phone. There's a problem. I dispatch a guy, or I make a call to a heating and air guy, whatever it is. And we go from there. That's just, I follow this checklist. I don't do any critical thinking about, hey, how can we minimize this expense to the owner while still achieving the objectives of keeping the tenant happy and pleased with the property and addressing their concerns or issues. And I think that's the perspective that really pays dividends in the long run for long-term hold operators and owners, is that ability to kind of blend the two with the perspective.
Anything to add to that, Heather?
Just agreement.
I think Matthias had a good point on not only when we send someone out, is it a lower cost basis to the owner because we're able to allocate that time in 15-minute increments. You know, you go to just the yellow pages, you're going to be at $100 just for the call out minimum.
Exactly.
But where the real value stands out is that then the feedback, the education from that problem stays in house. Surely a vendor's going to give you an invoice telling you what they did, but sometimes you're taking that with a grain of salt too, because their incentive is to have more business, right? But when we are able to routinely deal with an issue and have that education and experience trickle down within the maintenance team, that's where the real value, I think, comes out for the owner.
I think even also when we go outside of what our maintenance staff or what they're capable of doing with whatever limitations we have, whether it be tools or permits, we have a pool of vendors that we've used for years that we're able to pull from, and we know what the prices should be, right? So if they're not within those guidelines, then we can talk to them, communicate with them, figure out what is it, something we're missing or is it something you're missing, right? So I think that's valuable too. We have a big database of people that we can call on.
I agree that institutional knowledge is clutch, because I can't tell you how many times we'll get an estimate on something and I'll just go to Heather. I'll go, does that sound about right? And she'll be like, no, I don't know what that is. Or she'll be like, that's a pretty good one. That's a pretty good, because she's, they do enough properties in their region that they know what things should and could cost. And so that saves a lot of time and a lot of heartache, I'd say, on the asset manager from an owner perspective, to make sure that we're not getting fleeced because I can't be at the property every day and be personally vetting everything 100% of the time. That's why we pay them the big bucks.
Okay, big bucks. And I think you guys should ask for a raise. No, wait, that hurts me too. Never mind, don't do it. But I love that point. I love that point about both of them. First of all, I just want to point out that the changing of language, that now it's a database of people. I mean, what do you call it? There's no Rolodex anymore. I don't know if any of us are old enough to ever use the Rolodex.
I do say it though.
Chamberlain was apparently 5 when he started this company. So
the forward-thinking,
I love that idea
toddler.
I love that idea of the institutional knowledge building, and then that transfers to other properties. Now, I wonder where, if you take over a property, and I like to get in the nitty gritty of things, like, and they have a good maintenance person who knows that property, what's the negotiation there? When is it more valuable to have somebody on site versus building a more network of institutional knowledge?
Well, I think, size is the key determining factor of do you need someone just on site. I think the properties typically come out better to be close enough so they can be in the rotating pool of maintenance. And we will typically keep maintenance personnel on a specific property for a couple of years, but then we do cross-train and we will mix it up so that when we have issues like the winter storm or have in our area really hurricanes, even just employee turnover, that someone always has working knowledge of that property. There are some benefits on bigger properties to have on-site maintenance that doesn't leave. But then that person's kind of missing out on learning new things from other experiences at other properties as well. That person's going to have less touches at the hardware store and with other vendors for just education.
From the owner's perspective, basically it all breaks down to what the property itself will support. So for instance, Heritage Cove is just under the threshold of being able to support its own individual staff dedicated in terms of like cash flow to actually pay that expense at a reasonable market rate for a property manager to be on site there. But also in terms of busyness, like you don't want a guy that just sits there. You could pay for it, but maybe if you're making enough money somehow on the property and you can just afford to pay that, but still the guy's just sitting there where he could be better utilized, touching base at other properties and at smaller properties and kind of blending them all together so that you have that guy's that handyman or vendor's time used efficiently across the board.
I love the idea of them like moving around so everybody kind of knows what's going on. And well, I don't know if it's every place because that would be a lot, but a lot of the places in an area. So it's more about they need the knowledge to know who to talk to in that area, and it might be a bigger area or a smaller area, but they just have more things they encounter and more people that they have to talk to. So it just makes them more flexible.
It builds that institutional knowledge too.
Yeah, I've never really thought about it that way. It just makes me think of if ever you're gonna manage a restaurant, you have to work in every single part of the restaurant, and you have to know how to do every single one of those jobs down pat. You got to be able to jump on the line and be able to cook every recipe from memory. That's what it made me think of. They know so much more going on. And I love the idea the turnover is mitigated because there's so much sharing. That's really cool.
Another big determining factor, I mean, obviously your number one is going to be your gross revenues on the property and can it sustain a person. But outside of that too, you think about the market. In our market, like Heather was saying, we're a small region, so we know the vendors have very strong relationships with them. So it's easy for us to pull a painter, a plumber, these other kind of things that we usually outsource for the most part. If we were in more of a competitive labor market and going into a market where a little bit further from home for us, it might make more sense to try to push that property to have it on site because you're going to want that person to do all the things, right? Because you might not be able to get painters readily available or fair priced in that market. So if you're in a competitive market like that on a coastal region where you're competing with oil and gas jobs, you might really want to look at having to pay a little bit more to keep one person consistent.
Agreed.
Thought maybe Heather might piggyback off of what Chamberlain was saying.
Is that why you were making that face? Like
no face, just face. This was
just waiting. Just waiting.
Nice. I want to hear some stories. Unless you've got more questions.
Oh, well, I do. But...
Go ahead.
Well, first of all, I just want to know if there's ever been a scenario where like you had one person who could do it all. Like they both ran the office and were the maintenance person. Like, did you have that Swiss Army knife in the field who could just do it all? Who could, play right field and pitch sort of thing?
A Taysom Hill.
Yes.
Ooh, there we go.
Yes, to keep
Topical.
it local, I suppose. Yes, yeah, absolutely. So Taysom Hill is also a maintenance man for you guys, or on the off season?
I wish. I mean, he can call anytime he wants, right?
Well, I think everyone would be interested to know, how did you guys? Were you just in trying to find people in the area, Matthias? We just sent out a newsletter talking about finding property management in the markets we're looking. I know. I mean, maybe talk about how that happened.
Yeah. So I knew I wanted this property. I kind of did it backwards back then, where I picked a property in a market, and then I worked on the team once the property was identified. But I still remember that initial call. Basically, I started doing a lot of research and like just Google, like straight up Googling property managers and property management in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, and quickly discovered that there is an absolute dearth of professional property managers in Hattiesburg. There's in fact one good property manager in Hattiesburg. And so as soon as I stumbled onto their particular, I know. And so then we had to go with SVN. No, I'm kidding. So then, once I got onto their website, I was like, okay, this is more my cup of tea. And I started, looking at, and very quickly got on a call with them and talked about the product. And it was very evident that the that not only was the expertise there, but also the philosophy and the perspective that we looked for right away was evident. So I think I called like 2 or 3 property managers before I emailed you guys or whatever, however I first reached out. And I don't know that I ever got another call back other than you guys even responding to me. I don't think anybody ever even I was like, it's a pretty good indicator that I don't want a tenant who's calling into a black hole either. So it was pretty clear that we were going to be a good fit right off the bat after that first conversation.
Who'd you get a hold of? Who called you back?
I think it was an email first, and then we set up a call, and then Chamberlain was on the call.
Well, you heard it here, guys. That's the sophisticated process by which Matthias found his first property management program.
Hey, that's honestly because if it's easy for me to find, you know what I mean? If it's easy for me, it's easy for a tenant to get into the units and all that. Like when you're buying and dealing with mom and pop owners a bunch, this is like what we try to identify. Then if you can't, it's usually a good sign if you can't find the property online at all. It means that they're not getting market rate rents. That's what that means.
Well, yeah, good sign for us, not for the property at the moment.
No, not for the tenants. That's pretty bad.
Well, I know that. I mean, listening to this story was basically kind of my crash course in how to go secret shop. Essentially, I started doing some of that in this area outside of Charlotte and upstate South Carolina, and it's just basically like, are there humans? Do they talk to you? Do they return calls? Do they seem to know things?
Do they seem to care about this property at all?
Yeah, exactly. So it was an interesting, just very straightforward paradigm to view properties in. But at the same time, most things that are simple to explain are hard to do, right? Over and over and over again. So they always say that about chess, right? Learn in a day, mastered never, or in a lifetime, if you're like a couple of people. So, well, Heather, your name comes up all the time anytime I get down my renovation bag, where I just want to know all about the different processes of renovation. I don't know why that obsesses me, but it does. So I guess if we want to hear stories, or I don't know, pick Heather's brain about things and Chamberlain's brain about things more specific, I'll start here. What is the worst situation you've ever been a part of that you actually renovated? I mean, I'm sure you've seen terrible places and you were just like, absolutely not, we're walking away from this property. But what was the worst you actually took on and changed or actually renovated?
I can't think of us walking away from a property. Actually, I feel like for starting probably 10 years ago, would you say, Chamberlain? We started taking on properties that had bad reputations and started changing that. And I feel like at a certain point, not that we're experts in it, but we definitely, we have it down. We took over one property and I had a legit drug dealer that would have a single file, and I am not exaggerating, a single file line outside of his apartment door. And I'd pull up and they'd go away. And I'm just like, I don't even understand this. Chamberlain has to tell you about his rap video.
Ooh.
Not my personal rap video.
No, that one's good.
Right, wow.
Well, that's coming out later, 2020 for the year.
You heard it here, guys.
One point I want to follow up on what Heather says is, no, I think we've learned not to say no to properties. We have had to say no to a lot of owners. And I think that's our biggest evaluation. It's probably the same for you guys. If we get the right ownership, there's nothing in multifamily that we can't really get done. Even if it's a little bit out of our wheelhouse, we'll bring another team in to work with us if it's not our core asset. But as long as we have that good ownership relationship, that's really what we've had to turn away from. But like Heather said, about 10 or 12 years ago, up until that point, we just had organic growth from existing clients with relatively safe properties, very clean, long-term hold kind of properties. And then we were approached with kind of a problem child. And these people knew us personally, and they just begged us to kind of take it on. Until that point, we had been super, super conservative. We liked our life. It's got to be problem-free. We ran things the way we wanted to, and we did. We had prostitution, we had hardcore drug sales at the property, but it was a great location. And the key was it was a great owner. And so we jumped into that, and we quickly saw that our system from that we had just kind of organically for long-term hold management style worked the same way when we came onto a blighted property. Now the property, and we didn't realize that someone had made a rap video of the property. And I'm not going to name the property because they haven't renamed it. But the rap video was X Projects, and he's just walking around the apartment community. And this is before we took over, right? And so once we took over and we saw that we had a rap video of the projects highlighting the drug use and prostitution, we knew, hey, this is fun. But actually, after a year and a half into it, we saw dramatic changes, and then we sold out of that property 3 years later for that owner at a great return. And the rest is kind of history. After that, we realized we had the confidence just to kind of do our thing and that it could work.
That's cool. I wish I had that kind of street cred to where somebody's walking around my house in a rap video. I would be the coolest guy ever. I feel like I wouldn't get a lot of investors probably, but I'd be cool. I'm curious, and Jordan, you're probably about to ask the same thing. I would like to hear the definition of a good owner.
Well, he doesn't wear Chief stuff constantly. Wait, sorry. That's me. Okay, you didn't ask me. Never mind.
Heather, I'll let you shoot first on that one. What makes a good owner? I have an answer. I want to see if you can say the right answer.
Well, I feel like the obvious right answer is Matthias is the right owner, right?
Well, I would elaborate. I would say what makes the ability to take on a problem property when you go, like, if I brought you something that's a real mess, but it has potential, it's good location, and you like it. What about how we do business would make you be willing to undertake that?
Well, I think understanding what the owner's objective is with the property, making sure that aligns with what our objectives are, right? Making sure that they have the funds to do that, or that they can get them. Chamberlain?
Yeah, I think it is. They got to have two things. They got to have vision, and then they got to have emotional control to get to that vision. And so those are the two things we're looking to see if that person has. Okay, do you have a tangible goal? And a lot of owners wanted everything. They want, I want to cut cost and I want, higher occupancy. They just want it all. But when they have a grounded vision and then they seem to have knowledge, emotional, and that comes with financial stability, which can greatly affect your emotional control, obviously, if that goes south. Once we see that they have those things, and you can kind of pick up on that just through conversations, just asking them, what do you want? How do you envision getting there? And then talking about their past experiences. If they don't have a lot of past experiences, usually we will try to offer them. We have a few clients that are always willing to talk to new prospects for us. And many times we've asked those people to jump on a call and kind of weed out as well as give that owner a clear indication of what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. The last thing that we want to do, we always want new business, but we don't want to get in a situation to where our system becomes compromised. If it doesn't work for you, great, but we don't want to change who we are. And that's gotten harder year over year. I think Heather can definitely speak to that as one of the great things over the past 6 years is we've had incredible growth in our market. And we've had a lot of great outside investors like yourselves come in that we love working with. We've gotten a flood of outside investors, kind of for what Matthias was saying, is that we do stick out when you search our market. The downside to that is you do have more people trying to change the way we do things at times. And sometimes we need to. Obviously, we welcome feedback as long as it's a team approach. But we do have to be careful sometimes when we have constraints that may be changing our core values of who we are.
Yeah, and I think that's something that I really appreciate about them is that they're not willing to operate like, because there's plenty of property management companies where they're like, hey, we're all about cutting costs. We're here for the owner. We're going to make this the best investment ever for them, and the tenants don't get anything, and there's not a standard of living at the property, and they don't want to be associated with that, understandably, and nor do I. And so if somebody's coming in and wants to do, just doesn't want to operate with trying to create value for the tenants as well as in terms of, equity return. I appreciate the fact that they're like, hey, we don't want our name we don't want to be known as somebody who runs properties like that, as a slumlord or
I was
however
about
you
to
want
say,
to
yeah,
look at it.
slumlord adjacent. Yeah. Well, so that was what I was gonna ask. Like when you say ways in which you have been asked or implied to change by owners and goes away from your core values. I mean, is that I was gonna ask for more specificity. I'm assuming it's many of the things Matthias just said. Is there anything else along those lines that you would want to elaborate or add to? What else is there to that? Do you want to add to that? Either of you?
It can be in every facet from, we've had push to lower our standards on approvals sometimes on tenant base to get quick occupancy, in addition to cost cutting measures that really, Matthias, you talk about for the tenants. And we do always want to, this is these people's homes, and we always respect that. But it ain't no mistake, we always work for the investor first. Investor really only. Anything we do for the tenants, it does align with our value system, but really it's coming back to the owner because it's branding. And that's our big thing. In a small market like ourselves, we really dominate the market. We even have our own search site with the market name in it. And so we are a brand in and of ourselves within the community. We're in a college town, so you get parents, kids, family members that have come through and they're saying, call Southgate. We don't want to lose that because it hurts the rest of our portfolio if we end up running a property that doesn't live up to our brand. And also it puts the owner in tough positions because, again, when we do things right, especially in a small community like this, it really opens up our ability to deal with local government, local financing, and have a lot of really good discussions and direct conversations about things that we need. If we aren't doing our duty to benefit the community and run the properties right, we lose those abilities, which ultimately all comes back to hurting the owner, right?
100%. There's a lot of strategies that owners, I've seen it myself, owners take on that it's frankly not sustainable. So it's like, hey, I can limit my, whatever my expenses are on this property and kind of pull as much cash as I can a year, maybe 2 years, but that deferred maintenance or whatever it is going to come back, and now the structures are bad, the roofs are, whatever it is that you've been ignoring, it is going to bite you in the long. It starts that kind of death spiral of a property where now it's got a bad reputation, so people aren't willing to pay premiums for it, so you're getting less and less funds, and you just don't want to be associated with that as an owner, and obviously not as a manager either.
Do you want to return just quickly to this problem property with the CVS drug seller?
I'm sure it was ibuprofen.
How did you was it just, well, I was thinking like the queue, right? How did you, did you guys just kind of come in and start doing things and they were like, well, there's just too much going on here, so we got to move it along? And I just have to say, as someone who in college lived beside a drug dealer, and I didn't know that they were one for like 4 to 5 months, even though there was some random people banging on the door at random times, and just having watched classic cop shows like The Wire, this guy is not doing it right. You really shouldn't have a queue out the door. That's really too conspicuous. Yeah, he's really got to figure out some better strategies. But anyways, was it really just a matter of there's investment, there's people around, there's things happening, and they're just like, well, okay, this isn't the right spot? Or did it take more than that?
So, he moved out voluntarily, if that tells you anything. But we had started cleaning up the property. There were a lot of trees. It was really private. So when we started opening that up and making improvements to the property, obviously what he was doing became more visible, right? And he did end up voluntarily leaving. We actually moved the courtesy officer in there after that. It makes me smile still. Because he would get random knocks on the door late at night.
And the cop answers the door. That's great.
Yeah.
Oh, I've made a huge mistake.
It's like a sick sense of humor, right?
That is good. That is good.
Wow. I don't know if I would blame the trees for this guy's drug dealing. I don't think the trees really had anything to do with it. But that is funny. That actually is why the drug dealer that lived beside me in college, he also got kicked out for the same, that's how they got him out. It wasn't for drug dealing. It was for all the traffic. They said all the traffic, and I was like, well, there's a great irony of phrase.
Mhm.
Trafficking. It's kind of like getting Al Capone on tax evasion, right? Like they never proved he was selling drugs. It was just like, oh, well, you have people coming around at ridiculous times, so you're out. Okay,
funny.
I'm gonna try this again, Heather. So sure, there's no irredeemable project. I get you. This is your philosophy.
Mhm.
But just describe to us the most hideous thing you've had to fix as an apartment. Maybe it was color scheme. Maybe it was just terrible choices. I just want to know the details of your vision of renovation of something like that.
Okay. I feel like the most recent is the one that comes to mind. And it was all of those things, right? Like color scheme, mix matched ceramic tile on the floor, like grout lines that are 3 inches around the border, because I guess they didn't have a tile saw. And then when they would run out of tile, they would break it up into pieces and create like mosaics
That's
with also very thick grout lines. That property was it's not anymore. It was a maintenance nightmare. The previous management had people working that weren't qualified to work. There was an electrician that was really doing everything, and I never saw an electrical license, so I'm not really even certain that they were a certified electrician. But we've had to clean up a lot, and that's just inside.
What was the color scheme? What colors are we talking?
I mean, you pick it. I feel like we had the rainbow in them.
They just had a color, like they found a color at the store. We're like, hey, this is the shape we're looking for. I don't care what
Yes.
color it is.
We went in there were whole units that were hot pink and teal blue. We had a tenant show up about 6 months after we started management and bring us a bill. And he was like, here's from where I painted my apartment when I moved in. We weren't managing it at that time.
Oh, I'm sorry, brother.
Yes, so sorry.
Wow. Hot pink.
I mean, I am impressed by the creativity of the mosaic, though. I gotta say, like, did it turn out well? No. Am I, as a former teacher, would I have been like, I see where you're going with that? Yes, this is terrible, but I like where I like the attempt.
There's some ingenuity there, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Really thinking on your feet. Yeah, exactly. So that's the mosaic.
Yeah, here's what you have. Work with it, right?
No scraps went to
Absolutely.
project.
Exactly.
They
Every
were all
piece of every tile.
very efficient. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, they were not wasting. Yeah, absolutely. So I've asked Matthias this question, so I'm going to ask you guys if to see your perspective on this. If you had to pick one feature to change when renovating apartments, what is the one thing that will change an apartment the most?
Good question.
For the better.
I mean, I feel like I need more context. Like, are we talking C properties, B properties, A properties?
Let's say a C plus.
First of all,
and we're in a B plus neighborhood. C plus property in a B plus neighborhood.
Broad scope, I would say kitchens. Whether that's painting,
that's a
cabinets.
lot of different things.
Yeah, I know.
That's a lot of different things.
I know, right?
I'm saying one thing.
Oh, there's so many things that come into play.
I think it depends on, so you're asking Heather, who's dealing a lot more in operations, right? And so I think you're hearing an answer that's probably very appealing to tenants directly and what they're seeing. I've always felt, and I'm always a big believer, that it starts at your curb. And from there on, it sends a message of who you are. So for me, it's always front curb appeal, landscaping, and out the first part of the property that's visible. Because part of that's psychological. If you can change the outside, especially if you're saying it's a C property in a B neighborhood, well, the first thing is get the outside to look like a B. You know, make it blend in. And most people really they like the features in the apartment, but more than anything, the number one thing is pride of ownership and where they live. So if they say you drive by, even if the kitchen's not updated, they typically care a lot more about, in our market, of the reputation of the property. So when they tell someone this is where I live. Now, you get in bigger markets, that's a lot different, I think. But in a smaller community, I still think that your actual address in the outward view of the property is a big, big selling point.
That does make sense in a smaller community. If everybody's generally heard of the problem places, then you would never tell anybody that you live there.
It's that, and it's just sending a message of it's the first visualization of how you run the place, right? Not everyone has big bucks. Not everyone thinks that they're going to get a new kitchen or a new state of the art apartment. They want to know that we're going to service it and that it's going to be clean and well maintained. And so that can be subconsciously pumped into them from the very beginning with the curb appeal, and that's where it starts. Because the outside's not clean and it's not tidy, it's not sending a message of who you are and how you operate. They're not going to come to inside, or what they see inside is already going to be devalued because of the clutter on the outside.
Fair. Bad landscaping too. It's like, hey, they haven't trimmed these bushes ever. What makes you think they're gonna
And
pick
it's
up
an
stuff?
easy bang. It's an easy price point for your bang there too. It's a lot cheaper than doing all the kitchens or doing massive renovations across the property. And I'm not even talking about painting. I really think it starts with just your landscape on that side.
That's good. It's good stuff. That's why we again pay him the big bucks.
I mean, like,
There's a video that I'll send you a link for that it's about professional fallacies, and that I make my whole team watch, and it's about how your presentation sets up everything you do. And if the front end, if you're not presenting yourself in a professional manner on the front end, they're not going to view anything you do as professional. And so it always starts at the front end of the first point of engagement.
I like it. That makes sense. You could be the smartest
does
guy in
make
the room, but
sense.
if you look dumb and you act dumb as you walk in, then it doesn't matter.
well, okay. I'm glad you added act dumb, because the look dumb one sometimes just, you can't help it.
I know, Jordan, you can't help it.
Yes, I didn't want to say that it was me, but okay, sure. Well, I guess, that makes a lot of sense. I suppose for me, I was thinking, I like that Heather goes from refusing to talk to then pushing back with her own questions. I guess I was thinking about it more of like, say the outside, maybe it's a little bit older, but it's not a problem property as far as like people know that it is a good property and everything. But you were like, okay, we need to update the inside a little bit, maybe not a overhaul, but like we're going to update it. What would be the thing that like the tenants would be that they always like? They're like, ooh, like what is that? Like one thing, do you think, or two things? I guess I'll open it up. I'll make it less gimmicky.
But still, there's so many questions, right? Flooring is a big one. Is there carpet throughout? Roll vinyl. We see a lot. That updates so easily, just putting plank vinyl in.
Yeah.
If that already has it, then I would go to the kitchen. Is it dark wood cabinets? Maybe we should look at painting those. We have a painter that paints them for pretty cheap. That's a pretty good return. You can get some more money on your rent. When you get into granite countertops, I don't keep your 20-year-old appliances in there. It's just
It's true.
Mm-hmm.
It's
so many factors.
It's like what are you working with is a good input into that
be
discussion.
Changing carpet to LVP right now, that would be the thing, right? Or LPV, or there's so many different ways to say it. The plank, like that seems to be the one right now for sure, especially if you have like dingy carpet and then you put it, like if they saw before and after, they would be, worlds different.
Yes.
Or their old rolled linoleum, which we still see, which like that you just can't have.
Just coming up everywhere. I love that.
Yeah, turning colors.
Seams down the middle that are rolling up. It's beautiful.
Well, we don't want to keep you too much longer, but we got a rap video and a incompetent drug seller. Do we have any other great stories about just dealing with properties, like things crazy? They don't necessarily need to be illegal. Or, Matthias has a great story about a guy using his kitchen sink as a noise machine or bathroom sink as a noise machine. So that was
a fun
like
one.
massive water usage and they couldn't figure out why. It was just because he was running water as a white water machine.
He really likes that sound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was a person who was challenged, but that was the only like the water company kept calling us, be like, it's doing it again, and we'd be like, what? We'd send somebody over during the day. We shot lines. We did listened. We did this song. We did everything. I'm like, there is no leak. What's going on? And then sure enough, the next day it'd be like, shh. But it wasn't happening during the day. It was at night when they were asleep. So we finally just zoned in on that unit and put that person needed help anyways. They needed to be supervised. But that was a fun one. We were like, that's what they literally just turned the faucet on to get to sleep at night. That'll do it.
So
You got anything like
Chamberlain
that?
is
solved.
Chamberlain's smiling like he has something else. Just like he's
All right,
guilty.
I'll let you pick. You want to do Python or Bong?
Python.
You know, cell phones have come a long way, and I have been in the business a while. So maybe about 18 years ago, 17 years ago, I get a call at lunch and we were doing some military housing at the time. And I got a call from my kind of regional person at the time. And I could have sworn she said that there's a python in here. And I said, wow, it's really messed up. And she says, yeah, it's just laying out. I said, okay, well, we need to call animal control. And she seemed a little bit confused. And so she says, like a good employee, okay, yes, sir. And hangs up and then calls me back. Chamberlain, I really don't want to argue with you on this, but I don't know that animal control is the right group for this. And I was like, well, I'm not messing with a snake. And she says, no, not a python. It was a pipe bomb. And this poor girl sat there for about probably 3 or 4 minutes thinking, is this a test? Do I really call animal control for the pipe bomb?
This was not me.
No, this is not Heather. This is not Heather. But this has not only happened to me once. There's a second story. So I'll tell you the bong story. Fast forward a few more years, maintenance comes to me and says, well, they called me and said, well, we found a bong in the unit, in the attic on a turn. It was also a military unit. And I said, okay. I said, just go throw it in the dumpster. Again, a lot of hesitation there. You sure? I said, yeah, man, go throw it in the dumpster.
There are kids in this neighborhood.
Great employees, by the way. Great employees. They do what I say. It's really nice. So this employee does exactly like I said. And then his brother, who worked with us at the time, both great guys, comes to me, and about an hour later says, Chamberlain, I don't want to question you, but I don't know that we need to put bombs in the trash dumpster. And I go, a bomb? I thought Toady said a bong. And he goes, dude, my brother wouldn't know what a bong is. Good South Mississippi boys, straight laced. And this guy had put the bomb, and now this was not a pipe bomb. This was a bomb from Camp Shelby. Yeah, it was an actual ordinance that the tenant just thought they'd leave in the attic, right? So we called Camp Shelby, got them to come get the bomb out of the dumpster and dispose of it.
Awesome.
On 2 occasions in my career, I have mistaken bombs for pythons and bongs.
I mean, you're not
It's the accent
in
thing.
that headspace to be like, obviously they're going to say bomb.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
I think everyone understands why you would have why your brain translated that the way that they did. It's like, well, yeah, people have pet snakes. Okay. People smoke marijuana.
We found a few marijuana devices in our apartments before. I know that's shocking.
Yeah.
Bong, I'm like, it's just another day in the neighborhood,
Yeah.
Python, yeah, it's a little more rare. But yeah, my mind really wasn't just on pipe bombs and.
Man, you got to watch these military housing. They just leave stuff lying around.
Hey, they can come back anytime they want. Just no bombs.
As long as they're not EOD guys.
Those checks cleared, so that's good.
It's true.
We like those.
The bomb squad guy was not happy either.
The one from Shelby?
Yes,
Yeah.
he was very unhappy.
That
I
it
can
was
imagine.
there rather than wherever it should have been?
I think also that he was there.
It's a little outside his normal. The range is very restrictive. I've shot on that range actually in the gunship.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Look,
It's one of our normal.
It was meant that you come back.
Yeah, exactly. Matter of fact, that's probably my bomb. If you could just give me
gonna
that guy's
say,
number.
You have his address, right? Could you just send that back?
Yeah, just mail it.
Yeah.
No, the USPS doesn't frown on that anymore, right?
Well, I don't know if really topping finding bombs.
I don't think so. That was good.
I mean, even if you do find a python at this point, it's gonna have to be like big enough to have a
It's gonna
movie
be eating
feature about it
somebody.
Samuel L. Jackson better be involved, or no one's gonna care.
The python thing is my worst nightmare, to have a snake loose in the property, and I don't recall that we've had one, Heather. Do you? But
Like
I have
domesticated?
have heard stories of properties and snakes get loose, and you're like, we ain't found that snake yet.
No.
Yeah, I'm assuming you mean like the really big non-indigenous snakes that people have in their homes and their apartments, and then all of a sudden, like, hey, my 6-foot boa constrictor's missing. You're like,
Yeah, exactly. It crawled up through that air vent right there.
Yeah, they interact with gravity differently than we do, so that can make things tough.
Mhm.
All right. Well, we don't want to take up any more of your time. You've been generous enough. We really appreciate you guys
Absolutely.
coming on here and talking to us about property management and in a larger sense, real estate, and just also chatting it up with us. If you wanted to listen to yourselves, I will let you know when this one will release. Otherwise, we really appreciate it, and we're going to let you guys get back to doing all that important property management and bomb squad stuff. So
Thanks a lot, guys.
thanks a lot for being there. And as always, if you out there were met enough about to actually rate, please restack, 5-star heart, whatever it is, share. Yep. Tell someone else that there's 2 goobs that are okay to listen to. Always are acceptable. And as always, we're glad you're here this time, and we'll talk to you next week on the Get Invested podcast.
Blame it all on my roots. I showed up in boots and ruined your black tie affair. The last one to know, the last one to show, I was the last one you thought you'd see there. And I saw the surprise and the fear in his eyes when I took his glass of champagne. And I toasted you, said, honey, we may be through, but you'll never hear me complain. 'Cause I got friends in low places where the whiskey drowns and the beer chases my blues away. And I'll be okay. I'm not big on social graces, think I'll slip on